The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Riverside Mall, casting long shadows across the polished tile floor. Sarah Mitchell moved carefully through the crowded corridor, her white cane sweeping in practiced arcs ahead of her. At 62, she had been blind for 8 years, long enough to navigate most spaces with confidence, but not long enough to forget what it felt like to see. She was heading toward the pharmacy to pick up her prescription, the same route she took every Tuesday morning. The familiar sounds of the mall surrounded her. The distant hum of conversation, the rhythmic beeping of cash registers, the gentle rush of the fountain near the food court. Sarah had learned to paint pictures with sound, to build maps in her mind where others relied on their eyes. "Excuse me," she said softly, sensing someone near her path. The person didn't move. Sarah adjusted her trajectory slightly, her cane tapping a warning. She was almost past when she felt it, a foot deliberately placed in her path. She stumbled forward, her cane clattering across the floor. Her hands shot out instinctively, but there was nothing to grab. She hit the ground hard, her knees striking the tile with a sharp crack that echoed through the corridor. Pain shot up her leg. Laughter erupted above her. Not the nervous laugh of someone who had accidentally caused a fall, but the cruel, deliberate laughter of someone who had orchestrated it. "Oh, I'm terribly sorry," a man's voice dripped with sarcasm. "I didn't see you there. Oh wait, I guess you're the one who can't see, aren't you?" More laughter joined his. Sarah felt her face flush hot with humiliation. She could hear people walking past, their footsteps slowing but not stopping. No one helped. "Gerald, that's awful," a woman's voice said, but she was laughing too. "You can't do that." "Why not? She can't see who did it," the man, Gerald, replied. "Besides, these people are always in the way. If you can't navigate properly, stay home. This is a public space for normal people." Sarah's hands trembled as she felt around for her cane. Her knee throbbed. She had scraped her palms on the rough tile and she could feel the sting of broken skin. "Here, let me help you with that," Gerald said. Sarah heard footsteps approaching, felt someone pick up her cane. For a moment, hope flickered. Then she heard the sound of the cane being tossed far across the corridor where it clattered against something metal. "Oops, Butterfingers," Gerald said. His companions laughed harder. Sarah sat there on the cold floor, her dignity stripped away, her independence scattered. This was what she had feared most when she lost her sight, not the darkness itself, but the cruelty of people who saw her blindness as a weakness to exploit. "Is everything all right here?" The new voice was different. It was calm, controlled, but carried an undercurrent of steel that made everyone fall silent. It was a woman's voice, younger than Sarah's, with the kind of quiet authority that came from years of command. Sarah heard a soft panting sound, then felt the gentle pressure of a dog's head against her arm. The animal's presence was immediately calming. "Who's asking?" Gerald's voice had lost some of its swagger. "Lieutenant Commander Rachel Torres, United States Navy," the woman replied. "And you are?" There was a pause. Sarah could almost feel Gerald's calculation, whether to continue his performance or retreat. "This doesn't concern you," he said finally. The woman fell. "It happens." "That's not what I saw," Rachel said. Her voice remained level, but something in her tone suggested she wasn't someone who bluffed. "What I saw was you deliberately tripping a blind woman, then throwing her cane across the corridor. Would you like me to repeat that observation to mall security, or to the police?" "You can't prove anything," Gerald said, but his voice wavered. "Actually, I can," Rachel replied. "See that?" Sarah heard her footsteps, imagined her pointing. "Security camera covers this entire section. I'm sure the footage would be very interesting." The silence that followed was heavy. "She probably wants money," one of Gerald's companions muttered. "They always do." "What I want," Rachel said, her voice dropping to something harder, "is for you to apologize to this woman. Now, and then I want you to leave before I change my mind about calling the police." "I don't have to." "You're right, you don't have to, but if you don't, I guarantee you'll regret it. I have all morning and I promise you I'm very patient and very thorough. Your choice." Sarah heard shuffling feet, whispered arguments, then Gerald's voice tight with resentment. "Sorry." "Not to me," Rachel said, to her. A pause, then closer. "I apologize for your fall." "Now leave," Rachel commanded, "all of you." The footsteps retreated quickly. Sarah heard them arguing in hushed tones as they moved away, but they didn't come back. "Ma'am, my name is Rachel," the woman said softly, kneeling beside Sarah. "This is Ranger. He's a Belgian Malinois and he's very friendly. May I help you up?" "Thank you," Sarah managed, her voice shaking. She accepted the strong hand that gripped hers and felt herself lifted smoothly to her feet. Her knee protested, but she could stand. "Your cane is about 15 feet ahead near the trash receptacle," Rachel said. "I'll get it, Ranger, stay." The dog remained pressed against Sarah's leg, a solid, comforting presence. She reached down tentatively and felt soft fur, a warm head that pushed gently into her palm. "He's working with me," Rachel explained, returning with the cane. "He was with me overseas in Afghanistan. We retired about 6 months ago. Well, I retired. He's just getting started on his second career as a therapy dog." Sarah took her cane, running her hands over it to make sure it wasn't damaged. "Thank you, you didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," Rachel said simply. "Are you hurt your knee?" "Bruised, I think I'll be all right." "There's a bench about 20 feet to your left. Would you like to sit down for a minute, make sure you're steady?" Sarah nodded, grateful. Rachel guided her gently, Ranger walking on her other side. When they reached the bench, Sarah sank down carefully, testing her knee. It hurt, but the pain was already fading to a dull ache. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said after a moment. "Of course. Why did you help me? Most people just walked by." Rachel was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight of experience. "Because I know what it's like to be invisible, to have people look right through you like you don't matter, and I know what it's like when someone finally sees you." Sarah heard her sit down on the bench beside her. Ranger's head rested on Sarah's lap and she stroked his soft ears. "I spent 12 years in the Navy," Rachel continued. "Made it through Bud S training, became a SEAL, and for a lot of those 12 years people looked at me and saw only what they wanted to see. A woman in a man's world, someone who didn't belong, someone they could dismiss." "But you proved them wrong," Sarah said. "Eventually, but it took a long time and it cost me a lot, more than it should have." Rachel's voice held old pain. "The thing is, I learned something important. The people who try to make you invisible, who try to tear you down, they're usually the ones who feel small inside. They need to push others down to feel tall." "That man," Sarah said, "Gerald, he was wearing expensive shoes. I could hear them, Italian leather, and his watch. When he moved, I heard it. A Rolex maybe, the weight, the way it clinked." "Good ear," Rachel said. "Yeah, he was dressed like money, expensive suit too, the kind of guy who thinks wealth means he can treat people however he wants." "I've met his type before," Sarah said quietly. "Before I lost my sight, I was a teacher, 34 years, I taught second grade. Every year there were parents who thought their money made them better than everyone else, better than me, better than the other children." "What happened, if you don't mind me asking, your sight?" Sarah smiled sadly. "Diabetic retinopathy. I managed it for years, but 8 years ago it progressed faster than anyone expected. Within 6 months I couldn't see anything, just shadows and light at first, then nothing at all." "That must have been terrifying." "It was, but you know what was worse? The way people changed how they treated me. Suddenly I wasn't Sarah anymore, I was the blind woman. People started talking louder like I couldn't hear, or they'd grab my arm without asking, dragging me places I didn't want to go, or they'd just ignore me completely, talk over me like I wasn't there." Rachel reached over and gently squeezed Sarah's hand. "You're not invisible, I see you, the real you." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. It had been a long time since anyone had said something like that to her. They sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of the mall washing over them. Then Rachel spoke again and her voice carried a different tone, something determined. "That guy Gerald, he's going to do this again to someone else. People like him don't stop." "Probably," Sarah agreed, "but what can we do? He's rich. Rich people don't face consequences." "Maybe," Rachel said, "but maybe not. I wasn't lying about that security camera, and I have a friend who works in mall security. We served together, he was in the Marines. If I ask him, he'll pull that footage." "And then what?" "And then we make sure this goes somewhere it matters. Social media has its uses, so does the local news. Sometimes all it takes is exposing people like Gerald to the light. They're like cockroaches, they scatter when someone turns on the lights." Sarah considered this. Part of her wanted to just go home to forget this morning ever happened. But another part, the part that had stood in front of classrooms full of children for over 3 decades, the part that had learned to navigate a world without sight, that part was tired of being made to feel small. "All right," she said, "let's do it." Rachel stood up. "First, let's get you to the pharmacy. You said you had a prescription to pick up." "You don't have to." "I know, but Ranger and I have nowhere to be, and honestly, after 12 years in the service, I'm still figuring out what to do with myself in the civilian world. Helping you gives me purpose, so if you don't mind, I'd like to make sure you get home safely." Sarah smiled, the first real smile since she'd fallen. "I'd like that." As they walked toward the pharmacy, Ranger keeping pace between them, Sarah felt something shift inside her. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone. Behind them, unnoticed in the flow of mall traffic, Gerald Thornton watched from the second-floor balcony. His face was tight with anger. He had heard everything. The woman was a Navy SEAL and she was planning to cause trouble for him. Gerald pulled out his phone and made a call. "Marcus, it's Gerald. I need you to handle something for me. There's a woman, a veteran, making threats. I need to know everything about her, and I need you to make this problem go away." He listened for a moment, then smiled. "Good, do whatever it takes. I don't care what it costs." Gerald hung up and straightened his tie. He was Gerald Thornton, III, heir to the Thornton commercial real estate empire. His family owned half the properties in Riverside, including this mall. No one challenged him, not some disabled woman and certainly not some washed-up soldier. If this Rachel Torres wanted a fight, he would give her one, and he would make sure she regretted ever interfering in his business. Below, unaware of the storm gathering, Sarah and Rachel continued toward the pharmacy, talking quietly. Ranger trotted beside them, his tail wagging gently. For just a moment, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. 3 days after the incident at the mall, Rachel Torres sat in the small office of her apartment, staring at her computer screen. Her friend from mall security, Danny Martinez, had come through. The footage was crystal clear: Gerald Thornton deliberately placing his foot in Sarah's path, the cruel laughter, the thrown cane, everything. "This is gold," Danny had told her when he'd sent the file. "But Ratch, be careful. I asked around. This guy's family practically owns this town. His grandfather built half of Riverside back in the 60s. They have connections everywhere: city council, police department, even the mayor's office." Rachel had thanked him and promised to be careful, but careful had never been her strong suit. She uploaded the video to her computer and began editing together a short clip. Nothing fancy, just the incident itself with a simple caption: "This is how Gerald Thornton treats disabled people in our community. Is this who we want representing Riverside?" Her finger hovered over the share button. Once she posted this, there was no going back. Gerald Thornton would know who had done it, and if he was as connected as Danny suggested, there would be consequences. Rachel thought about Sarah, about the shake in her voice, about the way she'd sat on that cold floor while people walked past. She thought about all the times in her own career when she'd been knocked down, dismissed, told she didn't belong. She clicked share. The video went live on her Facebook page at 3:17 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. Within an hour, it had 50 shares. By dinner time, 500. By midnight, it had been picked up by the local news station and had over 10,000 shares. Rachel's phone started ringing at 7 a.m. the next morning. "Miss Torres, this is Janet H. Wang from Channel 7 News. We'd like to interview you about the video you posted." More calls followed: the local newspaper, 2 more TV stations, a radio show. By noon, Rachel's phone was ringing constantly. But it wasn't all support. "You're a disgrace to the uniform," one message read. "Attacking a respected businessman without proof. You should be ashamed." "How much did the old lady pay you?" another asked. "This is clearly a setup for a lawsuit. You veterans are all the same, looking for a handout." The nastiest ones came through anonymous accounts. "Watch your back, bitch, the Thorntons don't forget." Rachel deleted those and kept moving forward. She'd faced worse than anonymous threats. Taliban fighters didn't send text messages before attacking. The real blow came that afternoon. She was at the grocery store when her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Is this Rachel Torres?" A woman's voice, professional and cold. "Yes, who's this?" My name is Patricia Caldwell. I'm an attorney representing the Thornton family. I'm calling to inform you that you are being sued for defamation, invasion of privacy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The amount being sought is $2 million. Rachel stopped walking, her grocery basket forgotten. Excuse me. You posted a video of my client without his consent with malicious intent to damage his reputation. You have 24 hours to remove the video from all platforms and issue a public apology, or we will proceed with the lawsuit. You'll be served with papers by end of business tomorrow. That video shows him committing a crime, Rachel said, her voice steady despite the hammering of her heart. That's your interpretation. My client tripped accidentally and the rest of the video is open to interpretation, but that's beside the point. You violated his privacy by recording and distributing his image without consent. The law is very clear on this. I didn't record it, it's mall security footage, which you obtained without proper authorization and distributed publicly. Ms. Torres, I've looked into your background. You're a veteran living on disability. You own a small apartment. You have approximately $43,000 in savings. A lawsuit of this magnitude would financially destroy you. Is this really the hill you want to die on? Rachel's jaw clenched. Yes. There was a pause. Think very carefully, Ms. Torres. You have 24 hours. The line went dead. Rachel stood in the middle of the grocery store, her mind racing. $2 million. She'd barely survived Bud-S training, had faced enemy fire in Afghanistan, had crawled through mud and blood and exhaustion. But this was different. This was the kind of enemy she hadn't trained for. Her phone rang again. This time it was Sarah. Rachel, are you all right? I just saw the news. They're saying terrible things about you. I'm fine, Rachel lied. How are you holding up? I'm worried about you. This lawsuit, I heard about it. Someone from the newspaper called me for comment. Rachel, I don't want you to get hurt because of me. You're not the one hurting me, Sarah, he is. But maybe if we just let it go. No, Rachel's voice was firm. I've let things go my whole life. I let it go when my commanding officer told me I'd never make it through SEAL training. I let it go when other SEALs refused to work with me because I was a woman. I let it go when I got injured on a mission and they blamed me instead of the intelligence failure that put us there. I'm done letting things go. Sarah was quiet for a moment. You got injured. Rachel hadn't meant to say that. It's how I ended up retiring. IED explosion, took some shrapnel in my left leg. It's fine now mostly, but it ended my career. I'm so sorry. Don't be. It brought me home, it brought me to Ranger, and it brought me to that mall on Tuesday morning. Maybe it was all supposed to happen this way. You're a good person, Rachel Torres. I'm just someone who's tired of bullies winning. After they hung up, Rachel drove home in silence. When she got there, Ranger greeted her at the door. Tail wagging, completely unconcerned with lawsuits or threats, she buried her face in his fur and let herself have one moment of doubt. Then she got to work. That night, Rachel started making calls. She contacted the local ACLU chapter. She reached out to a veterans advocacy group she'd worked with after her retirement. She called every journalist who had contacted her and told them about the lawsuit, about the threats, about the Thorntons' attempt to silence her. The response was immediate. By the next morning, the story had shifted. It wasn't just about a man tripping a blind woman anymore. It was about a powerful family trying to bully a veteran into silence. It was about money versus justice, privilege versus courage. Rachel's phone rang at 8 a.m., a lawyer from the Veterans Advocacy Group. Ms. Torres, my name is David Chen. I'm an attorney and I'd like to represent you pro bono if you'll have me. I've reviewed the footage and I believe we have an excellent defense. More importantly, I think we have grounds for a countersuit. I can't afford. You're not listening? Pro bono, free. I'm a veteran 2 Army 2 tour in Iraq, and I'm tired of guys like Gerald Thornton thinking they can push us around. Rachel felt something loosen in her chest. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, this is going to get ugly. Are you prepared for that? I've been ugly before. David laughed. I'll bet you have. All right, let's go to war. The lawsuit papers arrived that afternoon, delivered by a professional process server who looked almost apologetic. Rachel signed for them, Ranger growling softly beside her. She read through the documents with David on speakerphone. It was worse than she'd thought. Gerald wasn't just suing her, he was going after Danny Martinez for releasing the footage, and he'd named the mall as a defendant for not securing their security system properly. He's trying to make sure no one ever helps anyone like this again, David said grimly. If he wins, it sends a message: interfere with the powerful and you'll be destroyed. Then we can't let him win, Rachel said. No, we can't. The next 2 weeks were brutal. Rachel's name was everywhere, on TV, in newspapers, across social media. The town of Riverside split into camps. Some supported her, seeing her as a hero standing up to corruption. Others sided with the Thorntons, viewing her as an opportunist attacking a respected family. Someone spray-painted "traitor" on her apartment building. Her mailbox was stuffed with hate mail. One night she came home to find Ranger's food bowl filled with something that looked like it might be poisoned. She threw it away and installed security cameras. But there was support too: letters from veterans across the country, donations to a legal defense fund she hadn't even set up. David had done it without telling her, and it had raised over $50,000. People stopped her on the street to shake her hand to thank her. And Sarah called every day just to check in. You could still walk away, Sarah said during one call. I would understand. Would you really? A long pause. No, I guess I wouldn't, because if you walk away, people like Gerald win, and they keep winning forever. Exactly. The preliminary hearing was set for a Monday morning in early March. Rachel put on her dress uniform, navy whites, her seal trident gleaming on her chest, her rows of ribbons telling the story of her service. She wasn't required to wear it, but David had suggested it. Remind them who you are, he'd said. Remind them what you've sacrificed. The courthouse was packed. News cameras lined the steps. Protesters on both sides held signs. Rachel walked through them all, Ranger at her side, her head held high. Inside, Gerald Thornton sat at the plaintiff's table with 3 expensive lawyers. He looked confident, comfortable. When he saw Rachel, he smiled, a cold, calculating smile that said he'd already won. The judge was a woman in her 60s, Judge Margaret Sullivan. She'd been on the bench for 20 years, and her expression gave nothing away. This is a preliminary hearing, she began. We're here to determine if there's sufficient cause to proceed with this lawsuit. Mr. Caldwell, you may present your argument. Gerald's lead attorney stood. He was smooth, polished, every word carefully chosen. He painted Rachel as a reckless vigilante who had violated his client's privacy rights, damaged his reputation, and caused him severe emotional distress. My client is a respected businessman and philanthropist, the lawyer said. The Thornton family has contributed millions to this community. They've built schools, funded hospitals, provided jobs to thousands. And now they're being vilified based on a heavily edited video that doesn't show the full context of what happened. The video is 1 minute and 12 seconds of continuous footage, David objected. There's nothing edited about it. The emotional context is edited out, Gerald's lawyer countered. What you don't see is that my client had just received devastating news. His mother had been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. He was upset, distracted. The collision was accidental, and his reaction was the result of extreme emotional distress. Rachel felt her stomach turn. It was a lie, a calculated, shameless lie. But it was delivered with such conviction that she could see some people in the courtroom nodding. Furthermore, the lawyer continued, Ms. Torres has a documented history of insubordination and emotional instability. Military records show she was forced into early retirement after a psychological evaluation deemed her unfit for continued service. Rachel's blood ran cold. That wasn't true. Her retirement was medical due to her injury. But where had they gotten information about psychological evaluations? David was on his feet immediately. Objection, that's a complete mischaracterization of. I have the documents right here, Your Honor, Gerald's lawyer said smoothly, holding up a folder. Judge Sullivan took the folder and began reading. Her expression didn't change, but Rachel felt the room tilting. This was it. They'd found a way to destroy her credibility. The judge looked up. These documents are sealed military personnel records. How did you obtain them? Through proper legal channels, Your Honor. Discovery requests. Discovery for what? This is a preliminary hearing. There hasn't been time for discovery, and these records should have required a court order. Judge Sullivan's voice had gone very cold. I'm going to ask you one more time, counselor, how did you obtain sealed military records? Gerald's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. We received them from a source. An illegal source, David said. Your Honor, this is a clear violation of federal privacy laws, not to mention the characterization is completely false. I have the actual records right here. He held up his own folder. Lieutenant Commander Torres retired with full honors after receiving a Purple Heart for injuries sustained in combat. There is no psychological evaluation deeming her unfit. None. Judge Sullivan held out her hand. David gave her his folder. She read in silence for a long moment. Then she looked directly at Gerald Thornton. Mr. Thornton, I'm going to say this once. I don't like my courtroom being used for character assassination based on fabricated evidence. I don't like attorneys who obtain documents illegally, and I especially don't like people who think their money and influence put them above the law. Gerald's face went red. Your Honor, I'm not finished. I've reviewed the video in question. I've read the depositions from witnesses, including the security guard who was on duty that day. And I've read Miss Sarah Mitchell's statement about what happened to her. She paused. This lawsuit is without merit. It is in fact a textbook example of a SLAPP suit, a strategic lawsuit against public participation, designed to silence criticism through the cost and intimidation of legal proceedings. Gerald's lawyers started whispering urgently among themselves. Therefore, Judge Sullivan continued, I am dismissing this lawsuit with prejudice. Furthermore, I am sanctioning the plaintiff's legal team for presenting falsified evidence. Mr. Caldwell, you and your colleagues will each pay a fine of $10,000, and I will be referring this matter to the State Bar for ethics review. The courtroom erupted. News reporters bolted for the doors. Gerald was on his feet, his face purple with rage. This is outrageous. My family will have your job. Are you threatening a sitting judge, Mr. Thornton? Judge Sullivan's voice could have frozen fire. Because if you are, I can hold you in contempt right now. Gerald's lawyers grabbed his arms, pulling him back down into his seat. One more thing, the judge said, Ms. Torres. I understand you've incurred significant legal expenses as a result of this frivolous lawsuit. I'm ordering Mr. Thornton to pay your attorney fees and court costs. In addition, I'm awarding you $50,000 in sanctions for the emotional distress his actions have caused you. Rachel couldn't speak. David was grinning beside her. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down like a thunderclap. Outside the courthouse, Rachel stood on the steps with David, Ranger, and Sarah, who had insisted on being there despite her nervousness about the crowds. News cameras surrounded them, microphones thrust forward. Ms. Torres, how do you feel about the judge's ruling? What's your message to other veterans facing similar situations? Do you plan to pursue further legal action against Mr. Thornton? Rachel held up a hand and the crowd quieted. She looked out at the sea of faces, some friendly, some hostile, most just curious. 8 years ago, she began, I raised my hand and swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. That oath didn't come with an expiration date. It didn't end when I took off my uniform. She paused, gathering her thoughts. When I saw what Gerald Thornton did to Sarah Mitchell, I saw someone vulnerable being hurt by someone powerful. And I couldn't walk away from that. Not because I'm a hero, I'm not. I'm just someone who believes that how we treat the most vulnerable among us says everything about who we are as a community. She glanced at Sarah, who was smiling despite the tears on her cheeks. This was never about me versus Gerald Thornton. This was about whether we're going to be a society where bullies can act with impunity because they have money and connections. And today, Judge Sullivan said no. She said that in her courtroom, at least, everyone is equal under the law. A reporter called out, "What will you do with the money from the settlement?" Rachel hadn't even thought about it. She looked at David, who shrugged, then she looked at Sarah. I'm going to donate it, she said, to organizations that support people with disabilities so that others like Sarah don't have to face the world alone. More questions came, but Rachel was done. She thanked everyone and turned to help Sarah down the courthouse steps. Ranger led the way, his tail wagging. At the bottom of the steps, they ran into an unexpected person. Danny Martinez stood there in his security guard uniform, looking uncomfortable but determined. Danny, Rachel said, surprised, I thought you were working today. I took a break. He looked at Sarah. Ma'am, I need to apologize to you. I was on duty that day at the mall. I saw what happened to you on the monitors and I didn't do anything. I watched that man trip you, watched him throw your cane, and I didn't want to get involved. I was afraid of losing my job. Sarah reached out her hand, finding his arm. You gave Rachel the footage when she asked for it. That took courage. It wasn't enough. I should have helped you that day. I'm sorry. We all have moments we wish we could do over, Sarah said gently. What matters is what we do next time. Will you help next time? Danny nodded, his eyes bright. Yes, ma'am, I promise. As they walked to the parking lot, Rachel's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her look. The message was short. You haven't won. This isn't over, GT. Rachel showed it to David. He's just posturing, the lawyer said. He's angry, but the lawsuit is dead, and if he comes after you again, he'll face criminal charges for harassment. Maybe, Rachel said, but she'd learned in the service to trust her instincts, and her instincts told her that Gerald Thornton wasn't done. She was right. 2 weeks later, Rachel was at the local VA office, meeting with other veterans about a new support program when her phone rang. It was the apartment building manager. Miss Torres, I'm so sorry, but I need to inform you that your lease won't be renewed when it expires next month. Rachel stepped into the hallway. Why? The building was sold, new ownership. They're renovating, turning it into luxury condos. All current tenants have to leave. Who bought it? A pause. Thornton Commercial Real Estate. Rachel closed her eyes. Of course, Gerald couldn't sue her, couldn't intimidate her legally, so he was going after her home. Is there anything I can do? I'm afraid not. I'm sorry, you've been a great tenant. Rachel hung up and stood there for a moment, letting the anger wash through her. Then she went back into the meeting and didn't say a word about it. But when she got home that evening, she found something waiting for her. An envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a handwritten letter. Dear Rachel, I heard about your apartment. I know we haven't known each other long, but you've become a dear friend. I have a small guest house behind my home. It's not much, but it's private and quiet, and it has a large yard for Ranger. If you need a place to stay, it's yours. No rent, just friendship. Sarah. Rachel sat down on her couch, the letter in her hands, and finally let herself cry. Not from sadness or fear, but from gratitude. From the overwhelming realization that in standing up for someone else, she'd found something she'd been missing since she left the service, a sense of purpose and a true friend. The next month passed in a blur of packing and moving. Rachel said goodbye to her apartment and moved into Sarah's guest house. It was small but perfect, one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and huge windows that let in the morning sun. The yard was indeed large, and Ranger loved it immediately. Sarah's main house was just 30 feet away, connected by a stone pathway. The two women fell into an easy routine: coffee together in the mornings, dinner several times a week, long conversations about everything and nothing. You know what's funny? Sarah said one evening as they sat on her back porch watching Ranger chase fireflies. I spent 8 years feeling invisible, feeling like I'd lost everything when I lost my sight, but meeting you, going through all of this, it's made me feel more seen than I have in years. You were never invisible, Rachel said, you just needed someone to look. We both did, I think. Rachel smiled. Yeah, maybe we did. 3 months after the lawsuit was dismissed, Rachel got a call from Janet H. Wang, the reporter from Channel 7. Rachel, I wanted to give you a heads up. We've been investigating the Thornton family's business practices. Based on what happened with you, we started digging. And we found a pattern: dozens of people over the years who have been bullied, sued, or pushed out when they stood up to the Thorntons. We're running the story tonight. I thought you'd want to know. The story aired at 6 p.m. Rachel and Sarah watched it together, Ranger curled up between them. It was devastating. The investigation revealed years of intimidation tactics, frivolous lawsuits, illegal evictions, and bribery. Building inspectors paid to look the other way. City councilors receiving donations in exchange for favorable zoning decisions. Employees harassed into silence when they reported safety violations. Gerald Thornton's face appeared on screen, ambushed by reporters outside his office. These allegations are completely false. This is a witch hunt. But the evidence was overwhelming: documents, testimony, recordings. By the end of the week, the FBI had opened an investigation. The state attorney general announced criminal charges were being considered. The Thornton commercial real estate empire began to crumble as investors pulled out and tenants broke their leases. Gerald Thornton himself resigned from the family business and disappeared from public view. 6 months after that courthouse victory, on a warm September morning, Rachel stood in the Riverside Community Center alongside 50 other veterans. They were there for the grand opening of the Veterans Assistance Center, a new nonprofit dedicated to helping veterans transition to civilian life, funded in part by the settlement money Rachel had donated.